Almost every single viable deck in Clash Royale has at least one building in it, and there's a good reason for that. Buildings are absolutely essential for defending against win conditions like Hog Rider and Electro Giant. But here's the problem. Most players just plop them down in the middle of the map, hoping they magically solve all their problems. And I know this because I used to make the exact same mistakes until I learned the proper placements that actually win games. You've probably seen players like this completely shut down massive pushes with perfect building placement, while others waste their buildings and lose their towers. It isn't luck. It all comes down to understanding the specific mechanics and optimal placements that most players never learn. Today we're going through every single building in Clash Royale, how to actually use them properly, avoid the rookie mistakes, and squeeze out every last bit of value from each and every one. Because I'm on a mission to help players master the defensive fundamentals that separate good players from great ones completely for free. I'm going to show you the exact placements and strategies that will transform your defensive game forever, just like the pros who dominate with perfect building usage. It's called strategic building placement, and it's the most game-changing skill you can master. Most players just drop buildings in the middle and hope for the best, but every single building in Clash Royale has specific placement zones that can either make or break your defense. Here's how it works. Buildings don't just defend, they control space, manipulate troop pathing, and force your opponent into disadvantageous positions. The difference between a 4-3 placement and a 3-2 placement can mean the difference between a full counter and losing your tower. For example, when you place a Tesla at the classic 3-2 position, 3 tiles from the river, 2 from the center, you're not just defending, you're forcing enemy troops to walk into range of both your crown towers while the Tesla stays protected underground until the perfect moment. But placement is just the beginning. There's a hidden building mechanic that even experienced players don't fully understand, and once you learn it, you'll never lose to Hog Rider, Giant, or Golem pushes again. Every building has an invisible pull radius that determines which troops it can distract and from how far away. But here's what most players don't know. Not all buildings have the same pull strength, even if they look identical. The Goblin Cage and Goblin Hut both look similar, but the Goblin Cage actually has a larger pull radius, meaning it can grab troops from further away. This is why pro players use Goblin Cage to counter Royal Giant, while regular players struggle with the same matchup. The secret is understanding that buildings with larger hitboxes naturally pull troops from greater distances. This means a bomb tower placed in the center can pull troops from both lanes simultaneously, while a cannon can only handle single lane pressure effectively. Now that you understand placement and pull zones, there's one more critical mistake that's probably costing you hundreds of trophies every season, and it has nothing to do with the building itself. The biggest mistake players make isn't placing buildings wrong, it's placing them at the wrong time. Buildings have health that decays over time, which means every second they're not getting value, you're literally watching elixir disappear. Here's the rule that changed everything for me. Never place a defensive building unless there's an immediate threat or you can guarantee value within 10 seconds. Your opponent can just sit back, generate elixir, and wait for your building to decay while they build up a massive push. The pros call this elixir bleeding, and it's why you see top players hold buildings in their hand even when they have full elixir. They're waiting for the perfect moment to maximize value, not just reacting to pressure. But knowing when and where to place buildings is just the foundation. Each building in Clash Royale has unique mechanics and optimal strategies that most players never discover. And that's exactly what we're covering next. There are 13 buildings in Clash Royale, and each one has specific techniques that can completely change how you play the game. But there's one building that's so misunderstood that 90% of players use it completely wrong, and it's probably sitting in your deck right now. Let's start with the buildings that win games through pure defensive value. The Inferno Tower is the ultimate tank killer, but here's what separates good players from great ones. The 4-2 placement versus the 3-2 placement. Against heavy tanks like Golem or Giant, use the 4-2 placement. 4 tiles from the river, 2 from the center. This gives the Inferno Tower maximum time to ramp up damage before the tank reaches it. But against faster threats like Hog Rider or Ram Rider, use the 3-2 placement to ensure they get pulled into both tower ranges. The Tesla is the most versatile building in the game because it hides underground. This means it can't be pre-spelled or sniped by range units. The secret technique is placing it 1 tile further back when facing Earthquake users. This forces them to waste their Earthquake or play it reactively instead of proactively. Cannon might seem basic, but it's the backbone of cycle decks for a reason. It fully counters Barbarians, Dark Prince, and Hog Rider for positive elixir trades. The key is recognizing when not to use it. Against Magic Archer, Dart Goblin, or Princess, wait until they're in range, or you'll give your opponent free value. Defensive buildings are powerful, but there's a category of buildings that most players completely ignore, even though they can single-handedly win games when used correctly. Spawner buildings are the most misunderstood cards in Clash Royale. Players think they're just for noobs, but top players use them to create unstoppable pressure that opponents can't handle. The Goblin Hut got completely reworked and now only spawns goblins when enemies are in range. This makes it perfect for defensive value. Place it behind your push, and it'll spawn goblins to support your attack while defending against counter pushes. Barbarian Hut is a wall that punches back. It fully counters Royal Giant and Electro Giant for positive trades or generating constant pressure. The secret is placing it in the opposite lane after your opponent uses a big spell. They'll have no efficient way to remove it. Tombstone costs only 3 elixir but completely shuts down single-target units like P.E.K.K.A and Prince. The skeletons distract on the way to the building, then 4 more spawn on death. It's like getting multiple skeleton armies for the price of one. But there's one type of building that strikes fear into opponents' hearts the moment they see it played. These buildings don't just defend, they threaten to end the game in seconds. Siege buildings are the most skill-intensive cards in Clash Royale, but when mastered, they're absolutely devastating. The Expo and Mortar can attack the opponent's tower from your side of the arena, but the key is knowing when to play them offensively versus defensively. Expo requires perfect protection and timing. Place it 1 tile back from the river to give yourself space to defend it. Use cheap cycle cards to distract enemy troops while your Expo locks onto the tower. The secret is patience. Don't force Expo plays when your opponent has hard counters in cycle. Mortar is more flexible because it has splash damage and a dead zone. You can place it at the river to pull giants while still targeting the tower once they enter the dead zone. This dual-purpose placement is what makes Mortar so powerful in the right hands. The key to siege success is outcycling your opponent's counters. Use your cheap cards to stay ahead in cycle, then punish when their building or tank is out of rotation. Now that you understand individual building mechanics, there's one final strategy that separates casual players from competitive legends, and it's something that most players never even think about. The most powerful building strategies involve using multiple buildings together. Tesla and Expo is the classic combination. Tesla tanks for Expo while providing additional DPS. Place the Tesla in front of the Expo due to its smaller 2x2 size. Elixir Collector changes everything about how you play. It's not just about generating elixir, it's about converting an elixir advantage into faster generation speed. Always place it behind your crown tower with more health to discourage spell value. The secret is recognizing when you have tempo control. Only play Elixir Collector when you're ahead in the game state and can afford to invest elixir for future advantage. But even with perfect building knowledge, there's one mistake that will ruin everything you've learned. And it happens in the final 60 seconds of every match. Overtime changes everything about building strategy. Suddenly, every placement matters twice as much because there's no time to recover from mistakes. The key is adapting your building strategy based on the game state. If you're ahead, use buildings defensively to protect your lead. Place them further back and focus on denying damage rather than creating counter-push opportunities. If you're behind, buildings become desperate tools. Sometimes you need to place an elixir collector in the middle just to distract a hog rider in the final seconds. The elixir deficit doesn't matter if you win the game. The most important overtime rule: never place buildings preemptively unless you're certain of immediate value. Every wasted elixir in overtime is magnified because there's no time to recover. Mastering buildings is just one part of becoming a Clash Royale legend, but it's the foundation that everything else builds on. And that's exactly why I've put together a complete Clash Royale mastery guide with over 20 advanced strategies covering every aspect of the game.